All right, everybody, thank you again so much for joining. My name is John Gold. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Watermark Life Insurance in Westlake Village, California. Today's presentation is how to hit home runs, how to convert star athletes into star clients. And we're joined today by Erik Averill of Athletes Wealth Management. Erik, again, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. We're going to be talking, again, not just about the athlete experience, but that's what we're going to focus on because Erik is a former star pitcher himself. And, a little bit about myself. I'm actually a sports writer in my other life as well. I've been writing for 20 years for places like ESPN, Sports Illustrated, Washington Post, New York Times, a lot of big places. And I've interviewed athletes of every shape and size, success and failure. And, the one thing that I think is the common thread with not just all athletes, but successful people of any kind is really just that common DNA of competitiveness and wanting to succeed and shine at what they do. We're also joined today by Nicole, our CEO, and Tim Whitmore, our Director of Premium Finance. Nicole, thank you so much for putting this on. You are married to an athlete, or at least a former athlete. He's no athlete no more. My best friend, Kevin, a former college football player. So Nicole, you know athletes, you know what it's like to sell to athletes, to marry an athlete. Talk a little bit about what separates athletes from, the crowd.
I mean, at such a young age, they have so much pressure on themselves, right, to perform at such a high level. And that really is just like where their focus is, as it should be. And so I think at such young ages too, they're recruited, these kids. And it's so important to, I think for most of them, to have just a baseline knowledge level of financial goals and, aspirations and how to manage finances, because these kids are thrown in right outside of college or sometimes while they're in college, right? And so many of the times it's like I can speak for myself. When I was in college, I had no idea how to manage a budget, especially in the millions of dollars, right? So when you're throwing that much money at these kids, I think it's really important for them to just, I think the main thing is for them just to have a grasp of any type of financial knowledge and to be in contact with people such as Erik, right? The financial advisors of the world that can help manage these funds for these kids, because they're just so thrown into, their game, and that's their focus, right? And that's all they really care about, to be honest. And at the same time, they really need to have just a baseline knowledge of what they're getting themselves into financially, because and I know Erik will talk about this as well, but there's so many people that can take advantage of you when you start making that type of money. So I think as long as the knowledge is there for these athletes and these celebrities or, whatever, whomever they are, that it's really important for them to just have just a small grasp of what they need to protect and what they need to do for budget wise. And then to rely on some really, solid people to help them accomplish their goals financially.
Well, now we're going to take the time machine back to 2003, Tempe, Arizona. Erik Averill is on the mound for the Arizona State Sun Devils, freshman All-American pitcher. So when we're talking about some of these young athletes who get their start and kind of need that navigation, I think Erik was one of them. And so that puts him in a great position to talk about his transition into the business world himself. And so that's kind of where we're going to get started. Erik, again, thank you so much for joining us. Do you want to introduce yourself for a moment and talk a little bit about Athletes Wealth Management?
Yeah, well, first off, thanks for including me on this. Glad to spend some time with you guys today. Anytime I get an opportunity to meet with other advisors who are passionate about helping people achieve really their life priorities, I jump at the opportunity. So as John shared, my background is I was fortunate to play baseball both at a collegiate level at Arizona State and then professionally. And so much of what Nicole shared, I experienced as an athlete myself, but then had this passion that when it was very clear that my career was coming to a close, that I wanted to be able to be a part of a solution. Something that we've heard reported for years and years and years, right, is that athletes don't end up in good financial situations. And I think that's really true for anybody who is focused on being the best in the world at what they are, and money happens to be a byproduct of that, usually we don't have skills. So whether it's a lottery winner or even an entrepreneur that has a liquidity event or professional athlete, is most people don't have skills on how to handle that. And so that was really my journey. I had to make a decision at 18 years old when I was in high school. Do I sign for a pretty significant amount of money, or do I go to Arizona State for baseball? I chose to go to ASU. Went through an injury, so we can talk about disability insurance in a little bit. Went through the process of having to interview sports agents, people from Scott Boras, if people are familiar with that name, to being a very young person, figuring out who to trust in my life. And there wasn't really a good roadmap on how to do that. And so we'll talk a little bit here in the future when I transitioned into professional baseball. The cast of characters that come along with that are even more intense. And then I would really say where I'm excited to have this conversation and hear from you guys is, one of the things we focus on is there's already so much uncertainty in an athlete's life or an entrepreneur's life. And it's our job as the advisor community to remove as much uncertainty as possible. And so, I appreciate you guys spending some time together this morning.
No, this is great, Erik. And you said something that I loved. When it became, I think you said when it became obvious my career was over as a player. I've written that story for 20 years, the idea of kind of what's next in an athlete's life. I'd love to know, before we really kind of get into the meat and potatoes of this, what was that moment like for you? When did you realize, this dream of mine is coming to an end, and I need to kind of face the music?
Yeah, it's one that lives etched in my memory. So 2007 spring training, I was coming off of a year where probably career numbers and expected to break camp as usual. And I was a control pitcher, and all of a sudden I was warming up before a game and had zero control. Went out in the first inning, threw a ball off the backstop. I said, that's not good. And then I felt the pull and the pop in my elbow. So ended up having Tommy John surgery, which in the baseball context isn't necessarily that bad of a thing, but my recovery didn't go as planned. So I had this year process where I started to understand that my career was going to come to a close. And there's just a reality that these athletes are the best in the world at what they do. And there is fresh blood coming in every single day. So it was very clear in 2007, and I ended up playing another 2 years, but there was a big separation between who I was in the minor leagues and who they are in the big leagues. So the nice thing is I was making that transition. It was really what led into my passion of joining the advisor community. Was I was doing my physical therapy. I was done by like 10 a.m. because you can't do a lot right after they've cut your elbow open. And I had an opportunity to go intern for a gentleman who worked with a bunch of athletes. At the time, it was Morgan Stanley, or it was Smith Barney, that was owned by Citigroup. And if we all remember 2007 and 2008, it was a really interesting time to be associated with the financial community, but not have the responsibility of the clients that are in the panicking modes. But it was 2007 when I knew professional baseball career was going to be done, and really I fell in love with helping people manage their net worth.
Erik, so you make that transition and you kind of realize that you're not going to be on the mound for a World Series, and that's a devastating moment. But it probably gave you some perspective on the idea that for every one of these athletes that you talk to, that they're going to face that ending. And I'm sure it magnified kind of the role that you play. Tell me a little bit about the role that you do play and how you initiate some of these conversations with these athletes who, for you, you're on maybe some common ground, but for some people they're not. And I'd love to know if there's a trait or an approach that you use that really kind of separates, that tries to separate you from the crowd.
Yeah, and I think this carries far beyond just any athlete, right? For all of us, is we're trying to earn the right to do business with somebody. It's remembering that there's a human at the center of the conversation, and that ultimately what we're trying to do is establish rapport and trust with somebody, and to develop a long-term relationship. So one of the things that I realized coming out of our athlete community too, and going through a process of having to choose who I was going to trust with my contracts or who I was going to trust with the money that I had, was it doesn't happen overnight. And I think people really figure out quickly if you're there to provide value to somebody, or if you're just trying to extract something from them. So it was the role in which I play is, yes, we tackle the X's and the O's of all things related to their net worth. But what I also understood very quickly is they have no framework. They have no education on this. And for so many people, whether it's the professional athlete or the business owner that you've worked with, or even a doctor, they're elite in their given field or in their specific thing. But there's a lot of insecurity around, I feel like I should know this stuff, but I don't.
Yeah.
So how do you disarm that insecurity very quickly by building a rapport that it says like, hey, I'm just here in the beginning. I'm not going to ask anything of you or from you. How do we start to provide you some value that's helpful with where you're at? So that's one of the biggest roles I would say, is disarming that insecurity and saying, hey, it's okay that you don't have the knowledge or the skill on how to handle it. So, and I think that's true in any relationship that you're trying to develop.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that is as we started talking about putting on this presentation and who was going to attend, you know, we were wondering if we were alienating people by focusing so much on athletes. And, you know, one of the things that we were a little nervous about is sometimes people kind of put, you know, athletes or any successful person on a pedestal. And, you know, there's this idea that, gosh, are they going to, you know, are they even going to consider me for something like this? And, you know, there's a term in sports that I think is probably overused in sports, but maybe underused in the rest of the world, which is game recognizes game, yeah. Right? And one thing I've noticed, you know, look, I've had a pretty blessed sports writing career. I've sat in BMWs and interviewed Roger Federer for ESPN. I did a feature on Kobe Bryant. On Saturday morning, I just went to breakfast with Jeannie Buss, the owner of the Lakers, for a big story that's coming out. And, you know, if I had looked at her like a billionaire owner of this team that I've been a fan of since I was 3 years old, I might have been a little intimidated. But, you know, my goal with her was to not try to get to her level, which I could never do. It's more so to bring her down to my level and speak on my language. And so, you know, Erik, and then Nicole and Tim, I'd love your perspective on this too. How do you handle the interesting mix of overconfidence in some ways and humility and underconfidence in others?
Yeah.
You know, personally, oh, sorry.
No, go for it, Nicole.
Yeah, personally, I just think it's such a great stance to treat all people alike, right? In the sense of like, when I'm meeting with someone, like whether it be another agent or advisor or a client of mine personally, at all different wealth levels, right? Is education is paramount. It's so important. Yeah. Because how do we possibly sit here across the table from our client and tell them this is what you need without even knowing like just like an ounce of what their financial goals are, or we don't really know what they want in life, or, you know, so I think it's so important that we sit across the table for them and educate them on what financial products are out there and protections and securities we can put in place for them. But ultimately, they need to decide what they think is best for their own lives, right? We can always make the suggestions to them, right? And we can teach them what products are out there and what, you know, different levels, or I'm sorry, levers you could pull to, you know, for income and for protection and whatnot. But ultimately, I think you create such a strong relationship with clients when you provide them knowledge and education, and then you can jointly come to an agreement on, yes, this is how we'd like to move forward. I just think that creates such a strong bond, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that, and echo what Nicole's saying. Is when I think a lot of times of when a sale happens, right, or somebody becomes a client, it's the natural outcome of a relationship built well, right? So it's so important when you have a situation. It's reminding ourselves that this is just a conversation between two humans, right? That our value and our worth are not predicated on our job descriptions or the amount of money that's in our bank account. And I think when you disarm that with that humility in a situation, it's really helpful. And then when you had mentioned, Jonathan, of like game recognizes game, one of the things that we're very passionate about here at AWM is, are we on the trajectory to try and be best in class? Are we actually professionals at what we do? Because the same way that they may be the best business owner, the best doctor, the best professional athlete, they want to work with the best. And that was something when I came out of being a former athlete is, there's thousands of former athletes that are in the financial space. So it's not just enough to just share some commonality, but why are they going to trust you? So are you an expert at what you do? Do you take your craft as serious? And I think a lot of times when you walk into a room and you share a conversation, you very quickly understand, is this person trying to sell me something? Or is this something they're passionate about, that they're an expert at? And then that goes into what Nicole said is, when you have confidence that you have the expertise, you're not trying to sell a specific, widget. You're coming in and saying, let me understand what your life priorities are. What are the outcomes that you want to achieve for yourself, for your family, and from a social standpoint? And then me as your advisor, as your wealth strategist, as your life agent can come in and say, oh, based off what you're trying to achieve, here's how I can help you achieve that, right, in these specific products. And here's why it makes sense. And I think that that's very important. Is the way to have confidence is actually have the expertise and know that you have something of value that that person needs sitting across the table from you.
Yeah, and one thing I think that's key is it's not just having confidence in the knowledge of the products you're selling or how to sell. It's actually caring about and valuing what you are selling, so that when you approach people, there's a righteousness to it. I think I talked about my background as a sports writer. Nicole kind of plucked me out of that obscurity last March. And that's when I joined Watermark Life. And one of the real things that she sold me on was the idea of helping protect people. And it's not my dad was in life insurance himself for 30 plus years. And all I kind of heard was the griping and sort of not the pessimism of it, but almost like here are the challenges and that trying to sell life insurance presents. And then joining Watermark Life and getting to know Nicole better in a professional sense, I learned that there should be optimism here. You're not just selling them something. You're providing them a peace of mind that they could never ever hope to achieve without your expertise and knowledge. And again, the passion for the subject. And I think that's something that kind of gets undersold, is believing in what you do. Right. And believing in who you are and the high-mindedness of the protection part, I think, is huge.
Let me,
go ahead.
Yeah. Can I just make a comment on that? I couldn't agree more. And I think what was going through my mind is I was literally replaying stories of our current clients and some situations that I've been, I don't know if fortunate is some of the words, because it's tragedy. What sometimes our value comes through on is, I think our job, there's so much in the world that we can't control, right? And there's so much uncertainty. And what we talk about is, for most people, they're trying to do something that very few people in the world do, be the best in class at it. and they don't have time to really even focus on or educate themselves of all the what ifs. And I think we all know this too as athletes. We're a little like, I don't know, delirious in believing that our risk doesn't exist for us.
Yeah.
Because you have to have this mentality that, of course, I'm never going to get hurt. Of course, I'm never going to die. Of course, these things aren't going to happen to me. That they really do need somebody who can come in and say, hey, I'm partnered with you, but we have to remove this uncertainty, right? And you are protecting lives. We had a situation, we had a young client unfortunately die in the middle of an off season because him and his wife were out riding, an ATV, wasn't wearing a seatbelt. He dies, leaves his wife and his little daughter. And it was the most tragic thing, but be able to answer that phone call and talk his wife through that no, your guys' financial structure is safe and certain during that time. Or, there's a tragedy a few years back, a star player for the Royals, Yordando Ventura, unfortunately passed away. What most people don't know, the way Major League Baseball contracts are structured is your estate will receive that money. So say you have 5 years on the contracts. The problem is that income won't be paid out until per how the contract is. Yet it's called IRD, income in respect to the decedent. They've got a big tax bill 9 months later that they've got to pay, and there's no liquidity. So in that situation, unfortunately, his family was forced to liquidate some stuff and file bankruptcy to be able to pay that tax bill.
Wow.
If the proper planning would have been in place, right? If we had an ILET set up and we had these things, you could have really removed that, that horrible situation in the midst of death. So I think to your point, like it's really understanding you have so much value to add to families by removing the risk and the uncertainty. So you're not selling a product, you're literally partnering with people to remove uncertainty and protect their lives.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's a great natural transition right now to kind of talk about just how life insurance plays a role in, again, not just athletes' lives, but the lives of successful people. And, I think what we do is kind of a double-edged sword. There's the protection that I feel like we need to lead with and we need to care most about and really champion. And then there are, quite frankly, the investment opportunities and the financial opportunities that being at a certain wealth level provides, like premium financing. Tim, that's where you come in. If you want to unmute yourself, there are, again, just like you said, IRD, Erik, there are specific, things that only impact either athletes, people of wealth, successful people. How do you approach them? Look, we talked a little bit earlier about the idea of kind of rising above the muck, right? I think confidently we can say things like, for example, premium finance. That's, from our perspective, that's a really solid, pitch, right? I think when we approach people with a premium financing pitch, if they are approved for it, I don't want to call it a no-brainer, but to us, it's like, hey, how are you not doing this? Erik, I'm sure you have 1,000 strategies and plans that you want to say, like, hey, how are you not doing this with your money? How do you convey that to someone who, they're probably batting away get-rich-quick schemes like every other day, right?
Yeah, right now we're all fighting Bitcoin, right? No, I'm
GameStop, baby. I'm all in on GameStop.
Yeah. Well, I think it's number one, you're showing an understanding of who you're talking to. And a lot of times they will recognize this when sometimes we have to remind them of the context of where they sit from a wealth standpoint. One of the things that we all know is most wealthy people actually don't think they're wealthy because you just compare yourself to the person in your social circle. So, you'll have people who are worth tens, 20, 30, 40, hundreds of millions of dollars. And they're like, well, I'm not wealthy compared to XYZ. But one of the things that I think is so helpful is providing context. And what we like to do is saying, a lot of times we're working with somebody who's in the highest tax bracket, right? So whether it's 37% today or potentially with the Biden tax changes, is you start to orient of where do you sit in the landscape of people. There's only 4% of Americans who have a net worth of $1 million or more. It drops down to 1% of Americans who have a net worth of $5 million or more. It drops down to 0.5% of people with a net worth of $25 million or more. And so the reason we say that is it doesn't make you better than anybody. It just makes you different. And what we also have to realize is that if 99.5% of the people probably aren't at your wealth level that you're either at or will achieve, that also means that 99.5% of the financial advice that's out there is not for you. It's for the mass affluent. And so when we're sitting here to talk to you, is some of the things we're going to uncover for you. This is what you deserve. This is the planning and the expertise that's really reserved for those in the highest tax bracket that just have to answer different questions. And the mass media is not worried about your estate tax, right? They're not worried about being in the highest tax bracket because your capital gains rate, most people don't even pay that amount in their effective tax rate. And so I think it's helping them uncover, oh, wait a second, I'm a little different. So we talk about, everything is tax aware investing. Your taxes need to be integrated in all your decisions. So if you've maxed out your retirement plans, you've maxed out all of this stuff, how do we do tax deferred growth, right? And so now all of a sudden the life insurance conversation comes in as one of the most robust tools for creating, essentially tax deferred growth that we can take tax-free loans against. Yeah. And this is where your expertise comes in, is helping them also understand in the life insurance space, right? In the agent space, not all agents are created equal. So a lot of these products that are terrible for the mass affluent are actually, when structured properly, some of the most powerful tools for you to create essentially grow your wealth over generation to generation. And so I could go on and on, but I think it's first helping them understand who are you in the context, and then why you're not familiar with some of these tools. Because there's a little bit of like, are you just trying to sell me something?
Yeah.
Whereas you're just starting to educate and say, no, this is where you're different. Here's where your taxes just eat away at your wealth. Here's how we don't pay taxes, right? Here's how we grow your wealth long term. And right now, there's never been a bigger opportunity with the Biden proposed changes to the estate and tax. I mean, this is a no-brainer for people in the highest tax bracket and high net worth space.
Well, what I think is interesting is, we have Tim here, we have Erik here on the advisor side. And then Tim, we're in life insurance, and sometimes we have to navigate these advisors who, sometimes are working against us, sometimes don't see the value of life insurance, sometimes don't believe, the juice is worth the squeeze. Erik, I think we've focused so much on how we court athletes here and how we speak to them on a human level. Tim, how do you navigate the circle that's around an athlete? Because sometimes it's impenetrable, 4 people deep.
Sure. Yeah, and I'll echo what Nicole and Erik have both said. We go in there and we meet with these clients, and whether it's a professional athlete or a business owner, they all have the same issues. So Erik can contest to this. When you're first starting out as an athlete, you have all these advisors around you that are quote advisors, but they may not be looking out in your best interest. But they definitely don't have a plan in place. And I'll tell you a quick story about one of my guys in a second. But business owners are the same. I walked into a business a couple of years ago. It was solely owned by one individual, worth $65 million, and they didn't have any plans in place. He's got 4 young kids. He's married, lots of executives. So fast forward to today, we have a plan in place that covers all of that. Now, how do we do that? Again, we don't go in there to sell something. What I view myself as, and may sound corny, is as a consultant. And just as Erik has said, here are your options. I'm here to educate you, to show you what are your issues. Let's uncover those. We ask questions and we say, what do you want your outcomes to be? And then here are the tools that will get you there. Okay. I always take the no away from them as well. I say, it's all right to say no if you don't want to move forward with this. At the end of the day, we educated you on something that we think can definitely benefit you. But that particular client I'm about to mention. So I was introduced to him by an advisor, because I think the value that we bring to clients is not just me and my 27 years of business or our company and everyone here. It's also those other experts. So those estate planning attorneys, those business planning attorneys, those CPAs, people that really specialize and they're at the top of their field that we bring as part of the team. So that when we're meeting with these clients, and I was actually brought into this by one of his advisors that I network with. So I came in as the expert. He was being proposed another plan. I said, no, that's not the best for you. And to Erik's point, that plan was designed for the masses. It wasn't designed for the ultra wealthy. So it wasn't right for this particular client. So I said, look, this is the way we do it. And as part of that process, we get a lot of information from the clients. Driver's licenses are one of them. So I got a driver's license for him. I didn't get a driver's license for his wife. It was an ID card. And I said, hey, does your wife drive? And he said, yes. I said, she doesn't anymore because you're not covered under your car insurance. And if she was to get into an accident, right? Now, I'm not a P&C guy, but again, by offering those values to their client and building that trust and helping to protect them, because even though he had a bunch of advisors around him, no one had brought that up. So that's where we add value.
Yeah, and I think, it's interesting how this kind of all plays into sort of the metamorphosis we've undergone at Watermark Life. In 2020, Nicole, myself, David Baldwin, Tim, and really the whole team at Watermark kind of sat down and said, how can we be different? How do we want to be different in the life insurance space? And we realized that the key for us was collaboration, and not just collaboration from between us and the carriers, not just collaboration between us and our agents, but really trying to provide this idea that wherever there's a gap in knowledge, that we want to step in and fill that. And if we don't have that ourselves, we want to find people and surround ourselves with people who do. And I think, Tim, that's such an interesting point and such an important point. The idea of, look, in life insurance, we can get so zoned in on what we do and on the products that we sell specifically and forget about, again, our role in protecting people. And so, Erik, you said this at the beginning. I mean, it's really all about starting a relationship with someone. And then at a certain point in that relationship, it might be the same. It might even be the same conversation. It might be 2 years later. It might be 7 years later when, now their kids are looking into a college fund and things like that. At some point you're going to be valuable to them, and your expertise is going to save them stress and time and money and peace of mind. And it's all about, again, I think, forming that team around you. And however Watermark Life can be a part of that team for you, we want you to know as our agent family that, we have that expertise. We want to be not just your back office, but really at the front with you. And however we can help kind of put those plans in order, I think is really important.
Erik, real quick, can you share a little bit about how you're finding these clients and recruiting them? I know that for myself, I like to partner with business managers, for instance. That could be either in the athlete space, the celebrity space, or just, high net worth individual business/business owner space. But how specifically are you creating these relationships, the courting process? How long typically is it taking for you to get, first meetings with these people, or have them engage back with you in their interest in financial planning with you?
Yeah, great question. I guess I'll give you guys a little context as well. When we say athletes, right, we're not all the same. We play different sports. So at our company, AWM, we have a few niches that we concentrate on. We have an NFL division that's led by a former NFL player, played 8 years in the NFL for us, Zach Miller. We have a PGA division that Aaron Goldberg, who played on the PGA, myself and 3 other advisors, my brother's my co-founder, focus really on the baseball side. But then we have a non-athlete side as well, as we have a medical really practice that that is focused on a bunch of doctors down in Texas. And then myself and my brother, part of our private investment side is we're allocated to the venture capital space up in Silicon Valley. So we work with a lot of founders up there of companies and a few VC investors as well. And what I would tell you, the playbook on how we approach all of them is the same, and it starts with education. So what we understood was, in a situation where so many people are trying to get at this very small group, whether it's the founder, the venture capitalist, the doctor, or the athlete, how do you set yourself apart? And it really is showing up with, in our mentality, one thing is our recruiting cycle or prospect cycle, if done extremely well, we're lucky if it's a year. Most likely it's 2. So we set out, it's a 2-year process, and we literally map it out. And sorry for the like cheesy analogy, but I'm sure you guys have all heard, it's just like dating, right? I didn't walk up to my wife and say like, hey, do you want to get married? I would have gotten slapped. But I think it's really important to understand that when you first show up, this person, they don't know you. They're used to so many people coming after them that their first response is like when the telemarketer calls you, right? It's like, why are you calling my phone? You know, and that's really the first response. So you've got to figure out, how do you bring awareness that you even exist? And this is the tools that we've used. We believe so much in content marketing that the way we built our business 12 years ago was old school, providing educational articles every 2 weeks that said, this is how an athlete's taxed. This is what disability insurance is. This is what XYZ is. To today, we now have podcasts for each specific division where we release it, right? It's on Spotify, it's Apple Podcasts, everything, where we're just talking about what's going on in their life. And I think, Jonathan, you had mentioned one thing of, you know, our job, yes, is to educate them on the specific tools we have, but one of the ways to earn trust is to help them understand that you know who they are and what's important to them. So we have a podcast called the Athlete CEO Podcast, and we're interviewing people that are best in class of what they do. That has nothing to do with financial planning. So whether it's, you know, we had Michael Johnson on, the fastest man on the planet, just talking about that, of his life going through a stroke and having a conversation there, to Kobe Fuller, a venture capitalist in LA, to Becca Van Dyke, who runs VR at Facebook. And that podcast has nothing to do with selling our services. It's just saying we're part of your community. We understand how you tick, and we're trying to add value. Like, play the long game, 24 months, and literally ask the question, how do I add value every step of the way? Mm-hmm. And just realize you have to have permission to ask for something, right? Like, have I added enough value that you want to be in relationship with me? So a lot of educational content. And then the last point, Nicole, which you said, it is the community. It's the network of advisors. Mm-hmm. That's really important. And so if I was sitting in your guys' shoes and I had a desire to work with people in the high net worth space in general, an underutilized network that I'm sure nobody focuses on is, I have this designation called the Certified Private Wealth Advisor. It's a designation that you either have to go to the University of Chicago Booth or Yale, and it's for people who deal with clients with $5 million or more. All of us are, the majority of us are advisors that are not life insurance agents. And we realize we bring in specialists. So, you know, I think that that's the type of thing is you go to that community and all of a sudden you start building relationships with CPWAs who all have high net worth clients that don't want to touch the insurance side of it. So, you know, that's, I rambled a lot, but hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, just on a much smaller scale, I've even found success in just like the country club that we're members of, right? Like becoming involved in the board there, or just playing there, being just there every day, right? And being social with people and saying hi and getting to know them. And then it's very easy for them to ask right back, like, oh, so what do you do, Nicole? Like, you know, and it's just these like honest, true natural conversations that take place. And it's like they get to know you as a real person first and not an advisor, so to say. And then once you are able to explain to them, yes, this is what I do, there's already that level of trust and rapport built in. So, I mean, I know that's on a much smaller scale than the athletes you're dealing with, but some of them are athletes.
Well, but, look, I think there is no such thing as a smaller scale in life insurance. Where someone is today, we have no idea where they're going to be 10 years, 20 years from now.
Great point.
And when you form those relationships, you can end up getting 7 policies out of the same person just because you're there every step of the way with them.
Yeah.
Eric, we're going to turn this over real quick to a Q&A. I'm going to try and get you guys out of here in the next 5 or 10 minutes. We again thank you so much for your time and attention here. This is, from my perspective, Eric, you've been great, and I really appreciate it. Ben, you want to hop on and unmute yourself? You said that you had a question.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. So Erik, this is for you. I was curious if you were talking in the beginning about working with athletes that are kind of in their infancy stage of their career. I wanted to ask you more specifically about, let's say, a retired athlete. So, for example, there's someone who he's of celebrity status, I would say, and I'm in the New York area. So that gives you 4 guesses as far as teams go. Well, excluding hockey, I guess that it keeps adding on. But I was thinking more like football and baseball. So I see this individual periodically at my gym, and I've never approached him because I wasn't, and to what you guys were saying before, keeping them on the same level and not to put them on a pedestal. It's natural for me because I never was a fan. I didn't really follow this person, so I don't think of him like, oh my God, he's this big celebrity. Anyway, he's a retired athlete, and one thing that I was thinking of approaching him now, because I saw something about him. It was a video, and it really struck and resonated with me in terms of seeing his what his personal life is like, because I didn't really follow him professionally, but then when I saw a documentary on his personal life, it kind of hit with me. And anyway, so I had an idea of figuring out a way through maybe a referral system, not really looking at his own financial picture, because I would assume that most people go to someone like him for that, that he probably gets these requests quite a bit from other advisors. But I know he's charitably inclined, and I was thinking more along those lines. But I kind of wanted to hear some of your thoughts as far as if you've approached someone that may be retired. The good thing is I can probably just go up to him directly. I don't know if he's going to defer me to his business manager or whichever, but chances are I can probably get 15 minutes with him initially. So I just wanted to hear some of your thoughts.
Yeah, well, hey, thanks for sharing that. Hopefully this is helpful. So first off, across the board for everybody listening, and this isn't true of athletes, but it is especially true of athletes. Your assumption should not be that they have their stuff figured out. It should be that they do not have it figured out, because let me tell you, like, here's a funny story. We have a client, played 13 years in the major leagues. He was referred to us a couple of years ago. He made over 40 million in his career. One of the things that they have in baseball is called the MLB Vanguard 401k, just like an employer retirement plan. We said, hey, where's your login for your 401k? And he looked at us sideways, right? He didn't even know he had it. We set it up really quick. He's got $500,000 sitting in there. That's never been touched, right? So, and he's a guy that people looked at as like he's got his business stuff together. So I can tell you across the board, they don't have it figured out. They're very, very, if they are, they're like a unicorn. And we know that's pretty much the same thing on the business side. But what you just shared of, hey, I saw a documentary and it's something that moved me. Like, going back to setting yourself apart and starting a relationship to your comfort level, I would literally just walk up and say, say Tim was the athlete. I'd say, hey, Tim, you know what? I hadn't really followed your career, but I got a chance to see that documentary. This is how it impacted me. I just want to say, like, I'm really glad that you did that, and move on. Because I would also tell you, as an athlete coming out of it with nowhere near a famous career, you're so insecure that people see you for more than just an athlete, that that little comment of, hey, I just want to let you know that that did impact somebody. It impacted me.
Exactly.
And you go to the same gym with them, right? So don't ask for the business manager, don't ask for the financial advisor, don't ask for the agent, because I can tell you what usually happens, right? We shut that down so quick. Because one of the things as the life insurance advisor community, we just have to face, you guys have to face, is it's like me, like I'm one of 300,000 financial advisors. People already have a perception in their mind. So if they hear life insurance, they think Northwestern Mutual, like you're coming to stuff me with a whole life policy and I don't want to talk to you. Whereas I would play that out of, making that comment, figuring out some things, he's charitably inclined, even providing him. I wouldn't ask for a meeting or anything. I would say, hey, I did a little more research after we had that conversation. It seems like you're a charitable person. Hopefully, do you have a donor advised fund? Do you donate appreciated stock? Like, I would figure out what are the questions that are important to him on the charitable side, and just get a relationship with them, because now I promise you nobody's talking to him about those things. So that's my advice.
Yeah. And to me, the way you kind of explained, like, not following his career, that ironically, that can also kind of be a positive, right? I think these athletes are so often, the only people who come up to them are like, oh, 1992, Toronto, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, they feel like that's, Erik kind of mentioned it. It's like they almost feel like a show pony. Like that's the only thing that you know me for. And so when you especially play into their intellect or play into their, their emotional, something like their charity, something like, I found out about your family, whatever it is, it really disarms them. And I think, again, athletes are armed at all time, and successful people are armed at all time with this, veneer of protection of like, get away from me. I know I have people for that. And so whenever you can, show that you're maybe a little bit different, I actually think that's a huge plus. So, Erik, that was great. We have, one last question, and I want to get this wrapped up, but, Ryan Bennett says, how can we as independent advisors collaborate with you in this space? It sounds like you have a lot of things figured out and already established. Are you encouraging us to reinvent the wheel on our own, or is there a path to come alongside you to contribute in a unique and positive way?
So I can answer first from my standpoint, and then let Nicole and Tim and you guys answer from your guys' deal. Is I would say it's always an evolving and changing thing. So don't feel like people have things established. I think Tim and my relationship, you guys have no idea on this call, is a perfect example. We both got to know each other at previous companies, at a, through a networking event, and we've been in the industry together, and it's been a very long evolving relationship. And so Tim's played the long game, right? And he was willing to talk to me when we had no clients 10 years ago, and to add value. I think of a huge life case that we were already down the road with, another agent literally had already essentially written the business, and it was our most important client. Guy had signed a 9-figure long-term contract that we're setting up an islet, and Tim provided all this value, because he knows it's going to come back in the long run, right? So I would say you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And in the relationships, like business and life changes, that I would say you just have to have a long-term mentality. And if I would encourage everybody on this call, and don't think it's overwhelming. Don't think you have to go start a YouTube channel or a podcast or anything like that, but figure out like, what are the niche? Who are the people you want to specialize in? And figure out like, how can I just start adding value in that situation? So I would say if somebody has a already established relationship, one of the worst things I could say is start asking for a meeting to show them how great you are. Just start adding a little value first, and then you're going to earn trust. But I think, yeah. So.
And Ryan, as it relates to Watermark Life, again, our whole perspective is trying to be as collaborative as possible, and really try to, again, not just be at the back of a case for our agents, but be at the front of cases, and try to figure out marketing plans, try and figure out how to put you in front of the right people, how to reach them on a constant basis. Nicole, do you have anything you want to add before we wrap this up?
No, just wanted to make it known that John will be following up with everyone with an email with Erik's information. So if you guys have any additional questions, or just you want to pick up the phone and dial and, have a candid conversation with him about your approach or whatnot, feel free to. He's more than happy to answer any of your questions. And Erik, thank you so much for your time this morning. We really appreciate it. I think it was very informative for me. So thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Again, everybody, thank you so much for joining. Go ahead, Ben.
No, thank you for everyone.
Hey, no, thanks for your question, my man. We appreciate everyone on this call. Again, as Nicole said, reach out to us to learn more about Watermark Life if you'd like to learn a little bit more about Erik. And we're going to go ahead and share this recording on our website at watermarklife.com. If you think anyone can benefit from this, please go ahead and share that with them, or put us in touch with them as well. Thank you again for joining our webinar. We're going to be coming back next month with our special business coach, Talia Jacqueline, and talking about how to sell it to emotion, and really how to find clients kind of on a psychographic and reach them on a different plane than maybe the way you've been doing it in the past. And I think that one's going to be great as well.
She's really good. Yeah.
Yeah, she's great. So on behalf of Watermark Life, Nicole and Tim, thank you guys so much for joining.
Yes. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.